Damien Chazelle knew when he was asked to take on this project by Marty Bowen and Whit Godfrey that one of the biggest obstacles was going to be putting someone like Neil Armstrong in the forefront of a story. Armstrong was widely known as someone who kept to himself, and even those who have known him for most of his life have even said they felt like they never truly knew him. See, a film that focuses on a character that doesn't let his emotions emerge and light up the screen is really going against the grain. Now, it's not like we haven't seen it before, but the traditional script habitually includes the unconstrained extrovert in the starring position. This obstacle actually ended up being the most marvelous deterrent in the film, as you could actually witness this man who just let his demons fester inside, and in just those little moments where no one else was around, you get a glimpse of those emotions come into view. It was these moments that played opposite of the public version of Armstrong that made him a character you could relate to and ultimately make sense of. What I like to call the climax that eventually led to the falling action of Armstrong's emotional and human journey was, of course, the death of his daughter, Karen. This isn't just an added plot line to make the story juicier or more dramatic. This was a real event that hit Armstrong in his core, and James Hansen, who wrote the novel of which the film is based on, made sure to showcase this in his book. The emotional repression that he already possessed escalated after this so-called climax, and as the film entails, he dove right back into his work, and as a normal father would lose all sense of groundedness, Armstrong masked those emotions and kept them inside. One of my favorite scenes in the film, a scene that I think really encapsulates Armstrong as a human, was the scene in which Gosling, who did an incredible job as Armstrong by the way, shuts himself into his office and with no one else around just erupts in tears and gets hysterical in a way. After this, we don't get much of anything like it. As Armstrong puts his eyes on the prize, he has another child, Mark, and the script purposely speeds right on through this, what should be a very big deal, bringing another human being into this world, especially after recently losing one. And the script does this to give us the impression that Armstrong isn't fully there with the birth of his third child. From then on, we get glimpses into his home life, but mostly we begin the journey to Gemini and eventually the Apollo mission. The underlying trauma drags this complex man down throughout this entire process through Gemini and Apollo as he struggles to let people in. This only gets worse when two of his closest friends lose their lives, and Chazelle does a great job of showing the emotional toll that this can actually put on a person with the funeral scenes and the excessive feeling these put forth. The pace begins to change in the film at this point, and we see the shift from the introduction to the birth of Gemini and the move to Houston, which begins the journey to the moon. Other than Armstrong's personal journey, the other storyline that seamlessly runs through the other is the journey to the moon and the real sacrifices that were made in reaching it. Now, we've seen the moon landing and other space adventures in movies, but like Chazelle said in his director's cut interview, the good majority of these film adaptations are fantasies. When you really look back, we have never really truly seen this real-life event on the big screen in non-fiction biopic form. And this, for me, was really the first time I felt the gravity of this, what seemed to be ludicrous idea of sending a man millions of miles away into space. I mean, we learned about it as kids, but it seems to me that most of us kind of shrugged it off. Chazelle and DP Linus Sandgren made the decision to shoot in 16mm and use excessive amounts of closed-in shots and even POV shots to make you feel like you are in these astronauts' shoes. And this puts a whole new perspective on one of the most important events in our history. Just sitting in that cockpit put chills in my bones, and these brave men did it with the scattered probability of actually getting out alive. The cost alone of putting this mere idea into fruition was ridiculous. The families that had to suffer, the equipment and the science, this was a gargantuan task that only seemed like a dream, especially in the 1960s. With the set design, and what I also thought was very good looking was the color of this film. The color was retro but also had a darker, mysterious tone that went along with the set design, and both served the story very well. Another very well intertwined thought was the moon being more than just the nightly appearing light. These characters don't look at the moon like everyone else. We may gaze at its beauty, but people like Neil looked at it as a visible goal. I mean, these astronauts could look at that little light in the sky and think, hey, I might actually travel all the way up there and walk around. It's like Tom Brady looking at the Super Bowl. He's actually in position to get to that point. Now, is the Super Bowl anything like reaching the moon? No, but you get my metaphor. And this theme played throughout, with Karen pointing at the moon, Neil multiple times looking through his scope at it, and many beautiful wide shots of the astronomical body. I remember being absolutely sidelined when that capsule opened and we heard nothing but silence surrounding the entirely empty atmosphere a million miles from our home, and you could just marvel at the surface of this thing we've only seen from afar. This scene was the first time I could grasp onto that understanding of actually landing on this big sphere up close and setting foot. The shot that gave me chills was Neil looking at Earth from the moon. The juxtaposition of once being in the opposite place, looking out at the moon as if it was just an unattainable object, and now looking at home in the same way, now standing on that almost mythical place.
Do you think you're coming back?
We have serious problems.
As this was a story about Neil Armstrong, I knew once we got to the moon, we wouldn't just shade over it. Armstrong needed a moment here. After all the lives that were lost, the overwhelming stress, and the pressure put on these men just to make it there alive, landing on that moon was far more than just a national achievement or a go-ahead in the space race. It was far more than that. Opening that capsule to reveal the first-person view was so beautifully subtle, yet astounding. Chazelle didn't want to make it this epic finale, but instead more like a poem on screen. The soft score behind these astronauts wandering the surface made us feel the beauty in this landing and what it meant for these men. This is where Armstrong gets his moment. Now, it is known that Neil wandered off to the Little West crater and was alone with no one else around for a period of time. It is not known what he did while he was there, but many, including his close friends and family members, believe he left something behind that day, and that something belonged to his daughter. This was a poetic masterpiece of a scene, the mystery that the film seemed to have left behind in the context to which how close Neil and Karen were. The flashback film sequences quickly became the backbone of this scene, and the beautiful score by Chazelle's right-hand man Hurwitz orchestrated it perfectly. Then the reveal of the bracelet we thought was locked away in Neil's drawer had a purpose all along. The laser-focused Armstrong had a plan for his loving daughter ever since he agreed to this mission. Millions of miles away from all the noise, it could just be a dad and his daughter. This was Neil and Karen's moment, no one else's. Just for a couple minutes, Armstrong can let what he's held in for so long, what has kept him so repressed and unable to share with anyone, even his wife. He can do so on the moon. We are left with Janet walking into the quarantine to see her husband after the 8-day mission. Now, going into this scene, you would expect there to be tears and emotions being let free. However, these are the Armstrongs, and like the rest of the film, subtlety is being valued here. The couple have been through 10 times more than most, and with this all being summed up with a trip to the moon, the two just look in each other's eyes as if saying simply, wow. The journey to getting to the moon was filled with so much despair, and it became more than a NASA mission, but about a family and where they are, but more importantly, where they are going. And that is where we are left off. So we reached this goal that has consumed the majority of our children's lives, this goal that in the process we lost our close friends, this goal that caused a distance from Neil and our children. In my head, I was gathering the words from Janet's facial movements and her eyes, and I came up with a feeling something like, somehow, some way we accomplished this, and there's no telling where we will go from it, but I am just so glad that you are home. It's almost like it's an awkward sense of relief. And what I like about this touch is that it is so unbelievably human. This whole film excluded the theatrics and the added plot lines, and it just told a story about a man who went to the moon. And this ending is right on par with this. It's life. Even after an incredible, at first faithless human achievement, you don't know what's next for your family.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Whew, that's gonna do it for this video. I really did hope you enjoyed this spoiler discussion on First Man. I do hope to be talking about this film again once awards season rolls around. I do want to hear from you guys about Chazelle's La La Land successor, so leave me a score from 1 to 10 and tell me your favorite scene in the film in the comments down below. like the video if you did enjoy it, and it's good to be back. I do apologize for my short leave of absence, but I'm back on the mic and it feels great. Make sure to subscribe for more videos like this one, including a lot more. Hopefully, those come very soon. We will see. Thanks again for watching. I'll see y'all soon.